Can you use ND filters if you're shooting in full auto on the Osmo Pocket 3 or the Action 5 camera? That's what we're gonna be talking about today, guys, in this video. And it could be the reason why you might be getting grainy images or just low quality footage from your Osmo Pocket 3 or Action 5 camera. Now, I don't have an ND filter right now on my Osmo Pocket 3, which we're currently filming on. Obviously, as you can see, the outside is a little bit blown out, but it doesn't matter because the image in here looks pretty good. To me, for this video, we are filming in D-Log. We are not in full auto. I do have ISO range on here, 50 to 400, and then we are in D-Log. I don't know if I said that already, but we are shooting in D-Log. 1/50th, so we get the natural motion blur. If I was outside, I would be having an ND filter on here. Now, when shooting ND filters, I highly recommend that you take control of your camera, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, let me tell you about ND filters. If you're a beginner and you're probably watching this video because you want to learn more about ND filters and if you can use them with auto, you probably got sold by the hype that you need ND filters for your Action 5 camera or your Osmo Pocket 3. I have both from DJI, Osmo Pocket 3 ones and the ND. And you usually get ND filters for the Action 5 camera. Now they do come in a set of 3. The reason is because of the intensity. Some of them are darker than others. For when you have really bright sunny days, you're gonna wanna use a higher ND filter to block more light, therefore allowing you to expose your image correctly to get this motion blur. Because right now, we don't have a lot of light in my living room. I don't have the lights on, it's just the natural light from outside, and I'm able to keep the motion blur without adding an ND, so I don't need them. But if I step outside, I'm gonna have to put one of these on. Now here's the problem that we're gonna get if you're using ND filters. I often get the question, and I got a question today that made me make this video on my live vlog. But somebody asked me, can I use ND filters while shooting in full auto? And I explained I explained this in a much simpler version. That's why I'm making this video now. The leaving everything in auto means that on the camera, these cameras are gonna be, let's take the Action 5 for example. It's gonna be the same thing on the Osmo Pocket 3, but since we're filming on it, we're gonna use the Action 5 camera. Let me turn this thing on. Okay, so right now, and I'm gonna just tell you the settings because if I show you like this, you won't be able to see it. I don't know if this will focus that good. But if I go to the right menu where the color settings are and all that stuff, and I go to exposure and I'm in auto, obviously the shutter speed is going to fluctuate however it needs to adjust for the image, and then your ISO would be set at full range, which is 100 to 1200, 8000, right? It's going to give you the full range. So if you go into dark, it's going to bump up that ISO. It's going to do what it needs to do to get you a properly exposed image. I'm going to tell you right away right now that you do not need ND filters to use these cameras. You can use these cameras and go out and film and vlog and travel and everywhere without ND filters, and you will be just fine. ND filters is a style preference. Like, you don't need motion blur. You don't need any of that stuff. If you like it, then just be ready to be fussing around with these ND filters, and that's just what you have to do. There's no way around it. You have to switch off intensities depending if it gets cloudy, if it gets darker, if you go inside a room, if you come outside, you always have to take them off and on and off. And if you want to do that because you really love motion blur like I do, then you're just going to have to deal with that and work around that kind of thing. So like I said, when you have the camera on full auto, like I said, you're going to be at full range with the ISO. You're gonna go from, on this camera, it goes from 100 to 12,800. That means that when we're outside, like right now, I'm just pointing the camera outside. I don't have no ND filter on here. And the reason why I'm gonna be telling you what settings it's reading right now to expose the image correctly. When I point this camera to this big window outside, right now, my shutter speed is saying 1600, and my ISO is 252 in order to get that image exposed correctly. Now, if I was to use an ND filter right now and pointed the camera outside, and I'm new at this. This is what's gonna happen. You're going to, let's say you don't even know where to start, so you're gonna start off with ND8. Right? So you have your camera on full auto, you put the ND on, ND8. Now I'm pointing the camera outside. Well, guess what? On this little screen right here, on my Action 5, it looks exactly the same as if I didn't put the ND filter on. And if you're new and you don't know what you're really looking for, the shutter speed now dropped from 1600 to 640, and the ISO actually went up to 800. Sorry, the ISO went up to 800 now. So at 6400, you're still gonna get choppy footage. You're not gonna get that motion blur until you hit that 150th. And when you hit the 150th, you're gonna sacrifice on the stabilizing, at least on the Action 5 camera, because it relies on shutter speed to stabilize the image. It's not a big deal. I use it, but you will sacrifice on stability because it uses digital stabilizing. See, if I was a beginner, I wouldn't know what was the ND filter for, but now my ISO is at 745. Let's say you wanted to, you probably were like, maybe I should use the ND32. Let's just go up to ND16, sorry. Let's go up to ND16. When you're shooting in auto, you're not gonna be able to gauge what ND filter you really need if you're shooting in full auto using NDs, because the camera is gonna compensate to give you the exposure that you need to, because you're giving it full range of the shutter speed and full range of the ISO. If I point the camera out there again, the footage on here looks exactly the same as if it did when I didn't have ND, when I had ND8, and now I have ND16. But now the shutter speed dropped to 400 and the ISO is still at, and the ISO now is at 1000. So it went up another, 200-300 points. The shutter speed is fluctuating at 400, 500. But now I have a ISO of 1000. That means there's more grain in the image. Even though the image looks exactly the same, I'm still not getting a true motion blur off of that because I'm shooting in auto. Now let's throw the heaviest and darkest ND filter on there. Boom, we're gonna put that on there, ND32. Now I'm gonna point it back out at my window, and now my shutter speed is saying, it's still, now my shutter speed went down to 240 and my ISO is 1200. So now my ISO went up 200 to 300, values or points or whatever you want to call them, making my image a lot more grainier and degrading it, because the higher the ISO, the lower the image quality. Same thing in here. I'm looking at my camera right now, and if you look this way, like if you look at the camera right here, I'm looking at it on my Action 5. Let's see if you can see it. And it might not be exposed correctly on the Osmo Pocket 3, but on here, it looks like I'm exposed correctly, and I am, but the camera in here is asking 7500 ISO, 100 shutter speed. I'm still not hitting the 150th, but my ISO is so high up, even though the image looks fine on my camera. Remember guys, that we can't use this LCD screen or OLED screen or screens on this thing to judge if the footage is noisy until you get it to your computer. But I do know for a fact that if you are all the way up at 7,000, 8,000, 7 to 8,000, 10,000 ISO, you're gonna get very grainy footage. Even at 3,000, 4,000, you're gonna start getting grainy footage on this. And also on the Osmo Pocket 3, you're gonna get the same thing. So when shooting auto, the way to do it is to, if you wanna shoot in full auto, I recommend that you actually limit the camera to a lower ISO value. For example, the Action 5 goes from 100 to 800, 100 to 1600, and then 3200, 6400, you get it. I wouldn't use this camera past 1600 ISO because I think 1600 ISO, you still get a little bit of grain, but it's doable. It doesn't look that bad. You can denoise it in post-production, and it just looks, it's still acceptable. Anything past that can really look very cheap and add a lot of grain to your image. So what I would recommend is limiting your camera to 1600 ISO. So now, if you want to leave the shutter speed in automatic, what that's gonna do is once the camera reaches the limit of 1600 ISO like it is here, it's gonna move on to the shutter speed and it's gonna drop it down to wherever you put the limit on. Now in the Action 5, I recommend putting your shutter speed for auto at 100 to be the minimum, because anything under that is going to, if you're using it in auto, it's going to, you're gonna lose out on your stability, and everything's gonna look really, it could drop as low as I believe 24 on the shutter speed. It's gonna be way too slow. Everything's gonna be jittery and really blurry. I have mine set, I have my parameters in auto for shutter speed set to 100 to 8000, and then I have my ISO 100 to 1600. Now I could have just told you those settings at the beginning and said this is how you shoot it in auto with ND filters, but I wanted to tell you why, and it's because I don't know if it's the design by DJI, which makes sense because this is an action camera. The action camera has digital stabilizing, which relies on shutter speed to stabilize this image. So I think it's always gonna prioritize shifting the ISO first before it goes to shutter speed and slows it down, to keep this to not sacrifice the stabilizing on these cameras. So if you don't lock it, or if you don't give the camera some parameters on the ISO of how far you want it to push it before it starts messing around with shutter speed and dropping that to give you more light, the camera's just gonna, if you put any ND, you're gonna, in camera, you're gonna see the same exact image, but you're actually cranking up the ISO, and when you go back to the computer, you're gonna see a lot of grain, you're gonna see the image looking muddy, and it happens on the Osmo Pocket 3, and I learned my lesson because I was putting ND filters while shooting auto back when I was doing my full auto videos. I tried a few with ND filters, and I did see that the shutter speed did drop down, but it also caused my camera to increase the ISO so high because I was using an ND that was too strong for it. Now, the best way to use ND filters, and the way I recommend using it is, and really the whole reason why you would get NDs is because you want to get this natural motion blur that's consistent throughout your whole video, whether you go into dark or whether you go in a light situation, the motion blur will stay the same. The only thing you would have to change is the ND filter, and I like to do that because I want to keep a consistent motion blur, and I just love how just natural and professional it looks to me. It's, like I said, it's a preference, you don't need it. The best way to do this, guys, is to go to manual and then set your shutter speed. If you're filming at 24 frames a second, which I highly recommend for your everyday vlog videos and everything like that, is gonna give you the most cinematic footage or more natural footage that we're used to seeing on TV. You're gonna set this shutter speed manual, and you're gonna go to 1/50th. And then I recommend for Action 5, I keep my EV at negative 0.7 EV. What the EV does is it tells the camera that whatever settings the camera says that these are good, you're telling the camera tone it down these many levels or turn it up these many levels from what the camera decides. So you're giving it, again, parameters. You're not fully using the camera in full manual. It's like semi-auto, I call it, where you're letting the camera do its thing, but you're giving it parameters so that way it doesn't blow out of proportion with exposure or any settings that you would not like it to use. And then what I would do, guys, is I would keep my ISO at 100 to 1600. That's what that's where I keep all my settings. And then you can judge what ND filter you need from there. You know, right now, if I have those settings set like the way they are, it looks like ND 32 might be what I need outside. And let's see what the camera's asking for exposure. It says the ISO is at 303, or sorry, yeah, 300 ISO right now at 1/50th locked. And so the ISO is not that high. So that means to me that I probably have some wiggle room to put in maybe like an ND 16, and then you're gonna get a cleaner image, because our goal here, guys, is to keep the ISO as low as possible to give you the cleanest image. That's how I'm able to get clean images when I film with my Action 5 camera. Let's see what it says now. ND16, yeah, ND16 is dropping down the ISO to 138, so it dropped it down in half, giving me a cleaner image. That's how that takes time, but that's how I'm able to, let's try ND8. This thing goes all the way down to 100 ISO. I think 100 ISO might be the max. Yeah, so right there, ND8 is making the camera go down to the base ISO, 100. They can't go all lower than that. The shutter speed is locked at 150th to give me a consistent motion blur, and this is about as light or as dark as the camera can expose. It's hitting rock bottom, so maybe ND16 would be the right choice here, because then if it gets brighter, you're gonna be out of luck because the camera can't go any darker. So I would probably pick like an ND16 there. It only bumps up the ISO to 300, which is not bad. And then if you come inside, you still have some wiggle room to play with. Like right now, if I pointed at you guys, the camera is going up to 1300 or 1400 ISO, and you know the shutter speed is still locked in at 1600, and I still have the awesome motion blur. So sorry, the shutter speed is still locked in at 150th, and you still have the motion blur. So I hope that this tutorial answered the question that if you can use your NDs in full auto, and just the things that you need to know to be careful with when using these things. ND filters do require some work. They give you amazing image quality, and obviously this natural motion blur that gives you that feel of a mirrorless or like a professional camera. That's the cool thing about using NDs, but it does require those extra little steps that if you feel like they're worth it, I do, then that's when you're gonna wanna buy yourself some of these. So keep the ISO as low as possible is the trick here, and hopefully those tips help you decide on how to use your ND filters, or if you even wanna bother carrying these around, because this is just another little thing you have to carry in your pocket. When you go outside, you gotta stop, you gotta look outside and say, okay, this looks like about an ND, 32. Put it on, check your ISO levels, see where you're at, and then go ahead and flop it out for a 16 or an 8, depending on what you need. On cloudy days, we're usually around 8 to 16 ISO, or sorry, 8 to 16 ND, and then on super sunny days, like no clouds or anything like that, then ND32 all the way. But you have to limit that ISO range to not go past 1600. On the Osmo Pocket 3, the same rule still applies, but the ISO ranges are a little bit different. On the Pocket 3, I do let it go up to 3200 ISO because it does have a bigger sensor, and therefore just performing better in low light. Plus you have the gimbal, so it doesn't rely on shutter speed to stabilize your image, so you got a little bit more wiggle room. But then the cons are that this camera is very fragile. It's got a gimbal head, you got to calibrate it sometimes. It's not as easy to use as this, and you can't just like throw this. You can throw this anywhere in your bag, in water, you can drop it, nothing's gonna happen to this thing. Osmo Pocket 3 is a little bit more fragile, and also putting these ND filters on are a pain, so I don't recommend using ND filters if you're trying to travel and vlog on the go, because it's just that extra step, another little thing you have to carry. You could easily lose these, drop these, break these. It's a little bit easier on the Action 5, but still it's just another thing you have to carry. So if you're running and gunning and trying to just capture footage without having to slap on NDs and stuff like that because you're running fast, shooting in full auto with no NDs is perfectly fine, especially on the Osmo Pocket 3, because it's got a beautiful normal color profile and you don't have to worry about that. So please, if you're on the verge of getting NDs because you've seen it all over YouTube, or because you just got this camera and you're looking for accessories to buy and stuff like that, you don't need them. It's only a style preference if you want it. So other than that, I hope that this video helped you guys. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.